Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be seeing if we can get this vintage Pennsylvania Railroad, what I believe is an F7, running again. I picked this thing up in a lot off of eBay fairly cheap. It's an old Athearn band drive locomotive. If I were to take a guess, it's probably from about the late 1950s. And in any case, it didn't run, which I was sort of surprised about to some extent. It's not uncommon for these to not run in the sense that they won't move, because, being driven by bands, the bands wear out very quickly on these, and rubber just in general, it tends to dry rot over time, so it's not very surprising that this didn't move. The thing I was surprised about, however, is that the motor didn't turn over. It's quite common to find these things, missing their bands, but most of the time when you put them on the track, you hear something from the motor. The motor usually runs, so I was a little surprised to see that. So we'll have to figure out what's going on with that, but yeah, in any case, we'll try to get it running again. These engines are definitely, not the greatest runners out there. Bands are just not, as strong a drive as, conventional, geared system. But they can be a lot of fun to work on. You can buy these things dirt cheap, and one thing that I really enjoy about them is they tend to be some of the fastest HO scale models out there. These things can really jump when you give them fresh bands and you get the motor really running well. So, yeah, they can be, just fun things to kind of mess around with and tinker with if you like doing that in the hobby. So we're going to try to do just that with this one, and hopefully we'll finish off with a runner. Let's get started. So we're just going to set this thing up on the track and just do a little test just so I can show all of you exactly what it's doing right now, which isn't a whole lot. You may notice that the trucks are kind of popping out of it. This is normal. The bands are actually responsible for holding the trucks in, so this is pretty common to see. But in any case, if we give it some power, what we'll see is that, obviously it's not moving, but we also don't hear anything from the motor. And we're also not seeing any current draw, so that's definitely not a good sign. So for whatever reason, the motor in this is not picking up power. I have no idea why, but there's only one way to find out. Alright, so let's open this thing up and see if we can figure out what the problem is. Here we are inside. Well, you can see that the motor at least isn't seized or anything like that, so that's good. Wire on that side appears to be intact, so the wiring all seems okay, and it's attached to that just fine. We got both of our springs in place. Well, I'm just going to take some test leads. We're just going to put power directly to the motor, see if we can get it to spin. It could be this thing just hasn't run in such a long time that the commutator isn't giving it any power, but honestly I have no idea. So yeah, let's try giving the motor some power directly here. Alright. Moment of truth. Oh. Well, I definitely saw some movement for a second there. I don't know why it's not starting up. Let's try that again. I think it's shorted or something. I'm not sure if that's just due to how I'm placing these on. But yeah, something definitely does not seem quite right about that. Let's try this again. It tried to go for a second. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, it's trying. Well, why don't we just see if we just give it power for long enough. Yeah, it's running a little rough, eh? Well, I'm starting to think just from years of sitting, this motor's having trouble turning over, so I'm just going to try to clean this up kind of the lazy way, which is just to drip a tiny bit of alcohol in here. Don't do this at home, because the thing is, putting a flammable liquid near something that makes a lot of sparks is probably not a very wise idea. But it should help us clear this off. It's not the best way to do it, but as long as we get the spaces on the commutator cleaned out after, it should be okay. So yeah, let's try this out, see if it does its job. And here, watch this. Yeah, well, it's not perfect, but that definitely did help clean it up. Now we just need to get the spaces and I don't know, I'll use like a Q-tip or something just to remove all the dirt. So I'll just get this down here to clean that off. On more modern engines, more modern Athearn engines in particular, I would just use a fiberglass pencil, but unfortunately, because of how they have this laid out, it's kind of tricky, so this should get the job done. Just get all that kind of, there's old oils and things like that on there. I think somebody oiled the commutator, which isn't great, but in any case, that's looking a lot better. And now we're just going to clean the little gaps. I can't stress just how important it is to do this part, just clean out the little areas in between these metal plates. Because over time what happens is parts of the brush and, you know, little just things, a little grime, you know, conductive lubricants, all sorts of stuff gets caught between these plates, and power can flow through it, and it can cause shorts between the plates, and it will generate a lot of heat, and in some cases, you know, your motor will actually start to burn up, and it will burn right out if you're not careful. But a lot of the time when you have a motor which is smoking, this is the source of the problem. I've even noticed, you know, a lot of locomotives, older engines have like that really strong ozone smell. I've noticed that after you clean these out, usually the smell goes away, or it's just a lot less strong. I think it's just because, you know, the motor isn't getting as hot, and also there's just not stuff burning between these plates. So it's something you want to pay attention to. And now that we got that sorted out, we're going to oil up the motor here. You really don't need to put a crazy amount of oil. You just need a little bit for each of the bearings. Anywhere where there's friction, really, you want to put some oil, except for the commutator. Some people do put oil on their commutators. I personally avoid it. I just don't find it's that great. If you choose to put oil on your commutator, don't put much, and use a conductive lubricant, because that will actually help the electricity flow versus, you know, a regular lubricant will actually reduce how well the power flows. So yeah, that all seems like it's turning pretty well now, so yeah, that's good. I just need to disassemble these trucks and try to put some bands on them. We'll see how that goes. Alright, so we're now going to change the bands on this number. This is not terribly hard to do, but there are some things you need to know about, you know, how to put everything back together. So I'm going to show you how I do this. You just have to remove these two screws. And one thing you have to watch out for is not to lose the little insulation sleeve that's located behind both of these. It's right there, the screws in it. You can leave the screws in just like that, actually. Just be careful not to lose them. And you don't want to lose that, because I did once, and you're going to have a short circuit. The way these work is sort of interesting. Actually, before I change the bands, I'm going to clean these wheels up, because they don't look great, but yeah, I'll clean the wheels up, and then we'll put the new bands on. There are a lot of ways to clean wheels, but when you have really old ones that are very oxidized, like these ones are, just take your chalk cleaner or what have you and scrub away. You could probably get away with using really high grit sandpaper, like 1000 grit or something like that. I mean, this is not great for the wheels, but you know, they're already so oxidized. I don't think you're really going to make them much worse doing something like this. Or you could use a fiberglass pencil. Really, whatever you want. Just need to get the wheels all nice and shiny again, because well, well, it looks like rust on there. So yeah, whatever works. All right, well, we got those all cleaned up. They're not perfect, but they're a lot better than what they were, so that should be good enough for our purposes. Anyway, we're going to put this truck back together. I'm only going to show you how to do one, because the process is the same on both of them, so if you can follow how to rebuild one, you can rebuild them both. In any case, you know, you can go out and try to find genuine Athearn bands. My local hobby shop, I think, sells them for like 15 cents each, so it's not bad. You can find them, but I usually just find like just cheap elastics like these. These are really not hard to find. I think you can probably buy these at any like big box store. They were used for making those kind of like bracelets and stuff. I don't know. If you have a younger sister, she probably has some of these, so just steal a few away from her and you'll be in business. So anyway, yeah, you just put those around the around the wheels like so, and then we're going to put this all back together. It's not the hardest thing to do, but I find putting this whole assembly back together can be a bit of a pain in the neck. Yeah, we'll just start off here. Put the wheels, obviously there's a hole in each wheel. It's pretty self-explanatory, or a bearing I should say. And then this just goes on here. You just need to make sure you have it the right way up, and then it goes under the plastic, because the way this works electrically is, here, I'll explain it in a moment here. Let me just actually get it together. There we go. The way this works electrically is you've got power which flows all the way through here on one side, but then on the other it goes under, and that insulator prevents these two pieces from shorting. And then the screws, which also connect to that wire, they go through here, which is also insulated, and they bring power up through that wire. So you just need to make sure you get this on the right side of that insulator. You can always tell the truck's the right way up because you got the little things for the brakes. Just make sure those are all on the same side. Anyway, now is the trickiest part, which is just holding this together. And I guess one thing you can do if you want to make life a bit easier for yourself is you can take off that little insulator sleeve, and you could just put one screw in while you actually assemble these. Because trying to do this with that wire is pretty tough. So yeah, just do this, and you don't want to torque it down completely, I would say, until you actually get that wire in. But then, see, now what we can do is it's going to hold it together while we put this in. There we are. And then if you want, you can take your bottle with some conductive lubricant in it and just fire a little bit of oil down into the bearings just to keep those lubricated. That's really all you have to do. Yeah, I got the positioning. I need to put this wire on that side. Well, I got that fixed. So now you bring this up here, and this is another thing you have to look out for, which is getting the bands out. Now, these just pop right off. The thing you have to watch out for is to make sure that you get the bands turned the same way. I mess this up all the time. But what matters is that the wheels are turning the same way. So you can see I did it right in this case, because you can see both the wheels are turning that way. So then you can just couple that back on there. In this case, this rubber sleeve doesn't really feel like it's doing its job anymore. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit and use, well, what I will call the model railroad hobbyist secret weapon, super glue. And you can buy these at Dollar Tree. I highly recommend getting yourself one of these if you work on a lot of stuff, because this little brush actually works really well at fixing things. You can just apply it so easily. And it costs $1, so yeah, you can go pretty far. I'm not sponsored or anything, I just like using these. Anyway, just get that back on there, and yeah, let it sit. And you know, obviously you are gluing that on there. It's not something you want to do if it still holds, but again, you know, you're working with a $10 locomotive. You don't want to be sinking too much into it, and you can still break the super glue right off the metal. So it will hold this just well enough for you to let this engine run. But if ever you need to disconnect it, this is probably not enough to stop you from taking it apart. Anyway, I'm now going to do the same thing on the other truck, get it working, and yeah, then hopefully our locomotive will run. Alright, so we got our unit pretty much completely reassembled. One thing that I forgot to point out, but I think I should, is that you want to always make sure when you get these things together that you also get this on this side, like actually facing here, because if the screw gets loose, these can actually touch the frame and cause a short. So yeah, not so great. But yeah, as you can see when I turn this manually, all the wheels are turning the right way. So at least we got that part right. So we'll put the shell back on, take this thing over to the track, and if we're lucky, hopefully our efforts have paid off and this thing should run. Let's go find out. All right, let's see how it does here. I'm half expecting there to be a short just because it's easy to miss stuff, but let's give it some power. Oh, look at that. We've got a runner. Doesn't seem too bad. Let's change the direction here. Stuttering a little bit. This thing might have not run in maybe 20 or 30 years, judging by how oxidized things are, but that's running pretty well. I'm very happy with that. I think it's safe to say Serenity. Yeah, it's running pretty nice actually. Let's see what kind of low speed we can do with it. Probably, yeah, not really anything too incredible. Yeah, it's really tough to do low speed in these things. Just kind of kick forward, but yeah, it is a runner nonetheless. It's running pretty smooth and quiet. And, let's see. Yeah, as usual, it's like a lot of other band drives are. It's pretty fast, so that's fun. Anyway, I think that will be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. I enjoyed working on this thing, and I'm glad we were able to turn it into a runner once again. So, yeah, anyway, with that, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching.